From Indianapolis, side of the NFL 2024 Scouting Combine, we continue to talk to a number of different people. Myself, Craig Grialou, Dani Sureck here in Indianapolis, and it's great to hear different perspectives because we get the immediate local perspective, but now you get the national perspective on what the Arizona Cardinals did and now hope to do moving forward.
A national perspective by someone in Charles Davis who called a Cardinals game last season, so really got a chance to see what this team was capable of with who was on their roster last year, the needs that they have, and what the future holds. He had nothing but high praises, not just about head coach Jonathan Gannon, his coordinators, Drew Petzing and Nick Rawlis. And Charles said that wasn't just from what he saw on the field, that was in the meeting days before the game. Very impressive to have that sort of reputation now for this coaching staff around the league of how hard they work and how that translates to their players out on the field.
That's what we heard when we had a chance to sit down with Charles Davis. How about we share that conversation? NFL Networks and CBS Sports. Charles Davis here from Indianapolis. So you have a very different perspective from a lot of different people that we've spoken to when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals, because you saw them play earlier this season.
I got lucky, and I say that no tongue-in-cheek. Got to see you at the end of the season, at home, wearing all white. It's the holiday season.
Those were slick.
You don't see that very often from the Cardinals, right? Against San Francisco. And I call the world broadcast of the Super Bowl, the world feed, with my partner, Ian Eagle. So we're always thrilled when we get a chance to see all the contenders. So getting San Francisco at your place, bonus time for me. But I will tell you, getting ready for that game, the organization, I knew Jonathan Gannon because I had time with him in Philadelphia. All right, so I'd gotten to know him. I knew him. Did not know Drew Petzing. Did not know Nick Rawlis other than reputation. Now, I'll tell you how old I am. When Nick was playing in Minnesota, I called his game. Okay, so I knew Nick that way. Didn't know him as the coach. I told Ian and my team before that game, I have not been as impressed in a first-time meeting with coordinators in a long time as I was with Drew Petzing and Nick Rawlis, and I really already knew how I felt about Jonathan. I really think good days are ahead for the Arizona Cardinals. And I'm not saying this because I'm sitting with you. You can find me saying this other places, okay? Trust me on this one. This is not one because I'm real big on. I've got my undergrad in political science, my master's in history. I'm not big on revisionist history, okay? If I said it, I own it. I said this that week. I say it now. I say it everywhere. I'm extremely impressed with the leadership of those three in terms of what's going on. So I just think that they've got a chance. What they did with San Francisco, what was the final score? Lost by about 20?
Lost.
But it didn't feel like it.
Yes. And
they did some damage. And by the way, the damage that they did in the run game was what caused San Francisco issues in the playoffs because people use that tape. I'll guarantee they use that tape. That big offensive line of yours. Because San Francisco, they think, we didn't play this. That tape was a training tape. And guess who took advantage of it? Detroit did up until a point, and they didn't close the door when they had a chance.
One of the big pieces, especially late in the season, was seeing Kyler Murray be Kyler Murray, small sample size, but you saw what he was capable of and what he did prior to the knee injury.
Yeah.
Is that another piece now that you can surround talent with?
It is, and I'll put it all on the table for you. When I first heard them talk about that Kyler Murray was their guy and they plan to build around him for the future, I was skeptical. I really was. I had a hard time believing, like, really? Are you sure? I feel like you guys got to go through a season and figure it out and go. But they grasped onto him pretty quick and just waited for him to get back. And then once he came back, then I saw what they were talking about. They want him to be their quarterback. They want him to be their franchise guy. They want him to have ownership of that offense and take it and run with it from there, which is something I don't think Kyler's ever truly had to do. He had ownership of offenses before, but mainly by talent. Now they want him to have the talent, and they want him to be their extra eyes and coach on the field and all those other things, and I really actually believe it. I told you, I was skeptical. Too many other things, but I really believe that Jonathan Gannon meant it, and Drew Petzing echoed it, and then I watched the team play, and I think that's where they're headed. I really do.
For this offense, Kyler Murray, his game to elevate immediately. Talking about the offensive side of the ball.
Can you play receiver?
That was going to be the point I was going to bring. But starting left tackle DJ Humphries tore his ACL at the end of the year. So, in your opinion, should the Cardinals prioritize the trenches, or do you look for a playmaker, especially with, look, it's a deep rookie class for tackles and wide receivers.
It certainly is.
How do you make a decision?
It's a tough one, right? It's a tough one. So let's go back and go through some recent history in the NFL. Let's go to Detroit. They took Penei Sewell and played him at right tackle because they had Taylor Decker at left tackle. That was a debate. That worked for Detroit. Let's go to Cincinnati. Left tackle. Should it be Sewell or should it be Jamar Chase? They chose Chase. That worked out. I think it's a matter of what Monty Ossenford is your GM, Jonathan Gans, the head coach, and the rest of the scouting department determines when they put that board up where the value is and how they rate those players. Some people think I can get away with a little bit lesser left tackle because I have a quarterback who makes quick decisions. He can run and move. That playmaker out wide is going to give me a little bit more. Others believe I got to have my quarterback protected. I need the left tackle and what have you. Picking where you're picking, because I made some notes on this, sitting there at 4, the receiver might be more value for you at 4 than the tackle would be, because I think you can get a very similar tackle down the road. But that receiver, if you really covet him, and by the way, you might get first bite at Marvin Harrison, because the first 3 off the board could easily be quarterbacks. You may have that decision right there staring at you. And I have to say, if you get the first bite at Marvin Harrison, it'd be hard to turn that down.
A lot of people look at that wide receiver class, those top 3 names, whether it's Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, they're all number 1 or projected to be number 1 wide receivers. How do you differentiate whether one is better than another or is a better fit for a particular team?
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, right? And each team has to determine all that. I have Harrison at the top, but that's not an original thought. We all have, and we have for a while. He's been that projected guy for a while. Has everything you're looking for. I watched him again on tape this morning, believe it or not, and just watch his ability to catch short ones, turn them upfield, catch the long one, late hands, go up and get it, run the intermediate route, present that big body, good frame, go and get the football, really like that. But all the others have that as well. Here's the interesting part. Malik Neighbors, I know his coach at LSU very well. Do you remember when the Biletnikoff Award came out and Neighbors didn't win it and he was really upset? Lost it by like a vote or 2. It was a really close vote. He was really upset about the whole thing. Was actually vocal. You don't hear that very often with those types of awards. So I talked to his coach about it, and he said, that's just another chip for him. Like, this guy he just munches these perceived slights. It's kind of Jordan-esque, and like he can create these things. He said you guys just took him to another level that way. And the kicker to the whole thing is a guy who's not going to be listed at the top of the board, but it's going to be a really good receiver later is Neighbors' teammate at LSU, Brian Thomas. And Brian Thomas is one of those guys that you can play at any position in the wide receiver tree, and he'll produce there. But he doesn't even have to practice them. He can get the lineup. He can get the game plan at a snap, tell you what the other 10 are doing on any given play. And I think that there's another level to his game that's still left. But you got to project it, and you got to believe it's going to go there. What you're getting from the front 3 is you're already seeing that. And that's why they're at the top of the board.
Cardinals defense finished bottom tier statistically. Could use help in the trenches.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. When you're looking at this draft class, you're thinking about D lineman or top cornerback. How do you prioritize what might have the most significant trickle-down effect for the Cardinals, maybe even in free agency to address?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And Dani, when you get into all this, now we're into that same discussion we had about the tackle versus the wide receiver, except on the defensive side of the ball, because I've grown up in my nearly 60 years on this earth, start inside out. I want the trenches taken care of and everything else goes. It wasn't that long ago. Remember when Denzel Ward came out out of Ohio State and went to Cleveland at number 4? They took him instead of Bradley Chubb, the pass rusher out of NC State, which seemed like a seismic change in philosophy. And at the time, it was prioritized because I think Greg Williams was the D coordinator in Cleveland. And he's like, nowadays the ball's out of quarterback's hands so fast that the cover guys actually become even more valuable. Now, some people believe it, some people don't. It'd be interesting to see what Monty Ossenfort and his crew believe, because we're talking about picking at 4, but you got a bunch of other picks.
27.
Right? deep draft all the way through. Offensive tackles, wide receivers, a lot of defensive backs, but mainly at the corner, not the safety position. So that's going to be the interesting part to see where they decide to go. And by the way, the linebackers this year, a good crop of linebackers, but I don't expect a single linebacker going to the first round.
Charles, I know you're in demand this week. We appreciate. Oh, absolutely.
I thought you were saying the law was coming to get me. I said, hold on a second. Oh, you mean I get to go talk to someone else? I thought they were waiting for me to take me down and get arraigned.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Enjoy your coverage on the NFL Network and CBS Sports as well.
I appreciate it. I hope we get a chance to see more of you guys in the upcoming years. Take care.
Thank you.
Really did mean it, Dani, when I said Charles Davis is in demand here in Indianapolis because of what he just told us and the perspective that he brings, having called a number of games, including the Cardinals in Week 15, and then also being able to talk about the draft prospects as well.
And how philosophies have changed over the years. There's been so much discussion about whether or not the Cardinals should maybe take an offensive tackle or a wide receiver with the 4th overall pick. So the 27th overall pick has gotten lost in the discussion a little bit. I like the conversation about maybe comparing a defensive lineman or cornerback and the philosophies of, do you need to get to the quarterback, or is the ball coming out so fast you need to prioritize your secondary? It's an interesting thought and interesting to see how this Cardinals front office decides to tackle that 27th overall draft pick.
I think you're correct. Number 27 has kind of gotten lost.
Which makes sense.
In the shuffle. Yet at the same time, we keep hearing here in Indianapolis that this draft is deep at the cornerback position. And if it's deep at wide receiver, and if quarterbacks keep going higher.
Someone's got to fall, Craig.
Exactly, and that's the benefit. Yeah, you have to wait, but it is the benefit of having a second first-round pick.
Absolutely. Look, I understand Cardinals fans. It was a bummer that the trade with Houston, a pick that everybody kind of expected to be a little higher, going with a rookie quarterback in C.J. Stroud, ended up falling down to 27. That could still bode very well for the Cardinals and what they want to accomplish and how deep a lot of the positions are in this year's draft class. 2
first-round picks, 6 in the first 3 rounds, 11 total for GM Monty Ossenfort. Complete coverage all week long here from Indianapolis. Go to azcardinals.com, azcardinals.com/podcast for more interviews as well as we continue looking ahead to not only free agency, but specifically the 2024 NFL Draft.